my little bandits, to
What to Watch Now,
where we talk about what's streaming on Netflix right now. And in today's episode, we are talking about The Highwaymen. Hi, I'm the Highwayman.
Steal your shoes off your feet, that's how Americans meet.
A fun fact about that song and dance from Over the Garden Wall, they had inspiration taken from Cab Calloway. In fact, they found a film strip with him dancing his kooky, surreal way of dancing he, signaturely was known for, and they drew right over every single dance move. That's why that one moment when he's cranking his arms around, it feels very smooth and seamless compared to the rest of the animation. Not that it's stunted, but you get what I'm saying. Anyways, focusing. The Highwaymen. I don't know what's happening right now, but I feel like someone is super insecure and terrified right now because there's this unusual trend coming up. Most of the movies haven't come out yet that I'm referring to. I've seen the trailers. This one aside, I thought this was a part of this trend. And I'm going to call them forced man's man movies. Men's men? I don't know what the term would be. And how do I express this? Okay. So a good example of somebody who you would suggest to some guy and be like, great movie you should watch is like 310 Omaha. And you would say that's a man's man movie, right? But because it's just a well-done movie, everyone can get down with it. You can call it that, but it's really here for everyone. It's a classic, well done, you get what I'm saying. But these movies coming up, it's like a bunch of guys got together and went, what do men like? What do men do? And it's like, honey, you're one of them. There's a lot of forced dialogue, and they kind of feel like weird parodies of themselves. It's so weird. A lot of it's very Western themed, or this vibe of like, that's just what a man's gotta do. And they're totally writing for the wrong audience and making everything just weird. I don't know why, because some of these plot lines are good. They're just messing it up. I don't know what's happening. It's like they're trying to bring back the glory days of like 90s and 80s action buddy comedies and serious movies. I would say 2000s was a great time for that type of movie. What's the one where the little girl... True Grit, that's a great movie. It's like they're trying to bring it back, but they have no fucking idea what they're doing. Now, by the terrible trailer, I thought Highwaymen was going to be one of them. Thankfully, it's not. It's a little bit that, but to be honest with you, it's just a nice movie. It is really, there's no forced man's man type of idea. It's talking about two gentlemen in particular, which I didn't know was a real story, so it was fun walking into that. The bare bones plotline of it is these Texas Rangers are brought out of retirement. They're referred to as the Highwaymen, and they are hired by the governor at the time, played by Kathy Bates. Her name was Ma, nicknamed Ma Ferguson, and they're hiring them to take down Bonnie and Clyde. And they actually, in real life, were the ones to take down Bonnie and Clyde. But the reason why they're brought out of retirement, or so to speak, were forced into retirement, was because Ma one time had outlawed all the Highwaymen and Rangers, because even though they are not kind of off the leash like bounty hunters are, like they work explicitly with the law and they are technically a part of the law and like police officers and stuff like that, they definitely do not follow the rules in the same way, which makes them more effective for getting serious jobs done, but it can cause a lot of backlash and heat for people who were higher up, aka Ma, and that's why she didn't, was like, honey, you aren't working for me anymore, and then was like, oh shit, everything's fucked up right now. I need you to come back for a second. One of the curses and or death wishes of movies that have historical moments in time or people, whatever, is when you're going to tell the story, you already know what's going to happen. You know Bonnie and Clyde got killed or were caught, whatever your memory is of the situation. So it's like, how am I supposed to feel any anticipation? How do I have my interest kept? I'm sure the way the writers are thinking of is, how do I keep their interest even though they know the end? How do I reinvent the wheel? And I have to say, they did that by shifting the focus from Bonnie and Clyde for who they were as like celebrities and more the destruction and problems that they represent, the moral dilemmas the main characters are experiencing themselves. It's like it's less about individual stories, even though those are totally there, and more about things aren't always what they seem and being kind of in the midst of I don't know how to describe it better than like a war. Like people talk about how when they go to war together, they're bonded, that no one can understand what they've experienced, but it doesn't mean that the experiences they had, they're happy about them or that they're glad that it feels bittersweet to win is what I'm trying to say. And when they're in the thick of these decisions they're making and watching, like they're saving the same community of people that won't give up this couple that are like killing so many people. They say, oh, they're stealing from the rich, but in reality, when they're stealing from banks, they're stealing from the everyday man too. And then at the same time, being someone who's, while they've saved a lot of the public, it's still not fun to murder someone. Or even talking about the idea of like, what makes you different than the same, because these people work on such a different moral code than the rest of the like they talk about how when you're a cop you have to do certain procedures of like saying something first, like raise your hands, but that might also give away your position, and they might be a little more dirty, a little more trickier, like the gangsters they're catching up, and it's like, what's the difference between them and the criminals? It becomes this ground or this plane of discussion that takes the precedence over just being like, it's Bonnie and Clyde. How did they catch Bonnie and Clyde? Which I think is really smart because because like I always think about whenever any product is made, we're living, I mean, this has always been true, but we're living in a time where if you don't have a proper catch line, idea, or branding, no one gives a shit, even if you have a great product. Do you see what I'm saying? And that being the case, I think they did a great job of being like, here's some all-star, is it A-star, all-star talent, like the top of the line actors that we know and love, mixed with a great tagline of Bonnie and Clyde and hunting down Bonnie and Clyde. But then they kind of were like, but by the way, it's totally not really about that, which I loved. It made me view Bonnie and Clyde in a different way. I have to admit, I still view it a little bit romantically. I think if I was in that experience in in that timeline, I think I would feel differently. But it was kind of cute. Like, they did steal from banks, but honestly, they were always on the run so much that it kind of makes you question, why would you keep doing it? Why? Like, it seems like you never can relax and enjoy all this money you're stealing. And I don't get a vibe that you're like, one last gig and then we'll retire. I mean, like, they loved it. They were in love. They thought it was fun. They had really, they had a lot of intelligent little codes and patterns of being able to get messages back and forth. And that's when it hit me that they just love this shit. They're almost like little kids with a tree house and secret codes and you know, what's the password to get in? The way they had notes passed in a bottle thrown over the fence with a neighborhood boy who would come out of a shed and run it over to a secret location and things like that. But in addition to just enjoying the journey and the craziness of it all, which makes them kind of unique as characters and gangsters, they honestly only wanted to do things that, like, it's like they stole money, but they really did things more out of more emotional value. Like, they went through all this craziness, being chased down, having to hide, murder people in his wake, just to bring a mom, or to Bonnie's mom, a bunny for Easter as like a present to her. At the end of the day, Bonnie and Clyde did all this shit for the thrill of it. Like, to the very moment of their death, they were reaching for the gun, ready to shoot. They just loved the whole thing. It was never going to be enough for them. It wasn't about the money. It was nothing but the lack of rules, the fun of it all, being in love, and just being super powerful. But their goal was never like, let's build a bigger gang, or we're going to buy this giant house. It's like, no, let's just keep running. Let's have secret codes. Let's just steal a bunny and give it to my mom. Woo! We're going to live forever! And I don't know, there's still something kind of cute and romantic about that whole thing. But the movie did a great job in these little still moments when you see Bonnie kind of all without all her dazzle. Didn't know she had gotten hurt towards the end and was had a limp, kind of added a fun mystery to the whole thing. And she would drag her leg and she would just kind of shoot someone in the face. That's what it's like. Like, a lot of people fantasize the idea of gangsters, no matter what group it's from. And in reality, the act of killing someone and murder is quite sad and fast and dark and deafening in its silence. And when they took that away, and this is the main point of, like, I feel like with the movie and the characters' interactions with Bonnie and Clyde and how they feel about them, you realize, you look around and everybody, I mean, they're whatever Bonnie is wearing haircut-wise is the new style, the way she's dressing. I mean, they're truly celebrities. People are rooting for them. People are hiding them. Nobody has a problem with them except the lawmen themselves. Because everyone kind of sees them almost as like Robin Hood, which it's like, honey, they ain't stealing for you. And fun fact, you think they're stealing from the banks, but the banks are, that's where a lot of people keep their money, so they're in turn stealing from you. But you realize that they're just sensationalized murderers. They are starting off with cops maybe that get in their way, but along the way we do see a couple casualties of other people who are friends, fellow criminals. I mean, like, I think if they had kept going on longer and longer and longer, I think it would have only continued to grow. It kind of shows like people's naivety to think that that would be the end of it. So let me tell you about these two men, their journey, and 3 specific standout like moments / like conversations. Okay, so first we start off with Kevin Costner, playing Frank Hammer. And it's explained that highwaymen don't always like to play by the rules, and they do this kind of thankless job, and a lot of them retire in a log cabin box in the middle of the woods. They don't make a lot of money. It sucks. They have a sad life, you know, and Frank Hammer's character kind of lucked out. He got to marry a pretty wealthy woman and retire, and he mostly is doing pretty well. But when he gets approached to do this, of course, it's like, I'm sure it's like Bonnie and Clyde, it's celebrities. He wants to take care of it, but he has that itch. He can't get over it. It's like he's once a killer, always a killer type thing. And he has a bit of friction with his wife, which, this is such a weird coincidence. I'm currently rewatching Lost in like my free time. And I watched the episode with Sawyer, where we get a little background story of a woman he conned that he really was in love with. And the woman, I think her name's like Kim Davis or something like that. Whatever. The point is, the woman who was played the wife of Frank Costner was the same woman in Lost. I was like, oh my god, I was just watching her last night. Like, what a weird, crazy coincidence, because she's not a super popular actress you would come across. Anyways, so he goes to potentially invite along Woody Harrelson's character, Manny Galt. Love Woody Harrelson. He's a big activist for weed, for the environment. He's a vegan. He's overall just like a really wild, happy, good-natured person. He's just awesome. I really loved him. And he was so funny. I loved his like old man routine where when he learned about taps, it was kind of new at the time, this technology. He kept just telling everyone, bragging about it, even though he didn't fully comprehend what wiretaps were. Anyways, Frank initially thinks, maybe I should invite Manny. Maybe I should not put him through this. But Manny's kind of pretty broke, clearly feels very guilty about his life, but he misses it simultaneously. This is what he's familiar with ever since it got outlawed. And, you know, he's sad that he basically was forced into retirement. But they end up teaming together and going after Bonnie and Clyde. And they get permission from the governor that they can work within Texas and they can't move outside of it. But when Bonnie and Clyde end up leaving Texas, which, by the way, again, I really loved how they filmed Bonnie and Clyde constantly from a distance, as if you're a witness to something. In fact, sometimes we see the perspective of the witnesses. I felt like we were the characters just out of reach of these characters we barely know. Everyone's got an opinion on them. So the boys, or specifically Frank, takes the initiative to be like, we're following them. Fuck your rules. You're not going to be mad at us and whatever permits or lines we broke if we get them. And when they are in, is it Oklahoma or something like that? They eventually are led to Bonnie's moms, because the entire movie, Frank keeps reinstilling the idea that crooks always go home. At the end of the day, no matter what they do, they have their family and the main things they love. And they are secretly witnessing and trying to get people to confess. Have you seen them? Where are they? And they keep getting just so close there, almost running into them, almost catching them, but everyone's constantly blowing their cover, and honestly, they're not as fast as they used to be. It's pretty goofy and cute, but they don't constantly make the old man shtick over and over and over again. Trust me, do not worry about that. And to clarify, when I say old man shtick, I am not ageist. I have no problem watching older actors, but sometimes I think it's done out of self-consciousness that they need to reassure the audience that there's a lot of old man jokes. I'm like, they can just be slow, make a comment that it's hard because they're older, and I got it. It's not even a joke. It's like, it's just relatable. And that's what they did throughout the movie. So I appreciated that they just allowed the actors to be great actors and not make it a bit or a parody, like I said. Anyways, so we start up to our first main important conversation. While they are in town, they talk to Clyde's dad. And Clyde keeps trying to be like, my son's good. He's a good kid. He one time stole a chicken. And I almost said kitchen. A whole kitchen. He stole a chicken, and then the law was basically picking on him ever since then. The law created this. He didn't. Kind of victimizing it. And to be fair, that does happen to a lot of people. That is a thing. But then Frank makes a counterpoint. He explains that at one point he wanted to be, I think it was a priest. And he was going out of his way to save money for it. And as soon as he graduated high school, he wanted to go into, I don't know if it's a school or go in to study it. And eventually the word got out that he was pretty good with a gun. And he got approached, would you use this gun? And Frank jokingly says, who do I got to kill? And the guy's serious. He asks him to go kill this man. And he even talks about how it was difficult for him. He wasn't sure if he should even do it. It was against everything he stood for. But the thing is, this would give him all the money he needs to go achieve his dreams. So he goes to attack this man. And at first he said something about he was shot in the head, the chest, a bunch of different places. I have no idea at this time and place in history how he would have survived, but he survived. And eventually he came back and he shot the guy because he was pissed about this. And it was right then that he realized his fate was sealed. That he liked it. But it wasn't like an evil quality. It was just he was good at it. It somehow felt right. And he talked about how that maybe that was in him all along. That maybe what was in your son's or Clyde's heart was there all along. And that the chicken stealing, while it might have seemed innocent at first, was just something bound to happen in one way, shape, or form. Because that's what this movie is constantly talking about, the idea. Is this really a bad person? Look, they're doing X, Y, and Z. Can you really say they're that bad? And stripping away all the layers and seeing them for the person or people that they are. And just talking about the idea of are we born bad? And talking about the idea that technically these two characters are very similar in their murders, their kind of lack of guilt, but one's on the side of the law and feels intense guilt, and the other person is on the other side of the law and feels none. Great points to be made. So anyways, they don't successfully catch Bonnie and Clyde in that moment, and they figure out, they're smart, and they eventually figure out, okay, well, because these gangsters always go home, one of the people in their party, their father lives in Louisiana. So they go to Louisiana, they get the help of the local cops. I loved how they get the help of the local cops too. It felt very supernatural, the way they kind of went undercover to trick them to kind of assess who they were. They pretended they were a part of Clyde's family, and they were trying to bribe the police. And the police, by the way, love Louisiana accents. They're so good. And they attack him with a pitchfork. They're basically like, we do not take bribes. You're a piece of shit. And immediately he turns around, pulls out his badge, and is basically like, you're the guys we want to work with. We're the same way too. We couldn't agree with you more. So they work together and they talk to the father of he's just a member in the crew. And basically are like, we'll allow your son to get away and be free. We won't chase him or anything like that. But you need to basically set it up so Bonnie and Clyde pull over and come and help you like you're changing a tire or something like that. And when they set this all up, and the night before, they're kind of getting ready. And they're anxious. So they're playing cards, they're talking. And Frank is on the front porch because he wants to be alone, while the other boys are talking. Eventually, one of them, Deputy Ted Hinton, played by Thomas Mann. By the way, Thomas Mann's one of those, like, little... I don't know how to express this, but do you see those actors, like, pop up every now and then? And they're not super well-known. They're not, like, A-listers or anything like that, but they're genuinely good at what they do. They're not always playing a character, nothing like that, but I don't know. You see them long enough in their career, they're always like, good for you. You're doing great, honey. You're doing great, sweetie. So Thomas Mann, or Deputy Ted, asks Frank about, I heard you and your partner, or asks Manny about, you and your partner have killed over 50 men. And he said, in fact, yeah, that's true. We've killed up to 50 men in one night at times. So they have a pretty large body count behind them in their history. And as they're telling the story and they're playing the game, the guys get quiet naturally and they get very serious. He tells a story about they were in New Mexico and they were fighting some bandits. And the problem was, the rule was they had to say in Spanish, put your hands up. But every time they did, it was alerting the other members of the party, and every time they did this, they were losing a man on their side, the law enforcement side. So, like, they weren't getting anywhere with these bandits, men were dying, it was serious, all because they had to follow the rules and the circumstances. And these were bad people hurting everybody in the area, so on and so forth. So one night, Frank says, we're not going to do this anymore. We're not going to say, put your hands up. And they went in there, and they basically shot everyone. It was bad. And even at this part, everyone's pretty serious. And this is saying a lot, because not the punchline, but one of the more serious moments is when he says he killed a little boy who was 13 trying to run away, and that he still sees his face. This is Manny saying this. He feels very beat up about that. A lot of people sometimes are like, oh no, you killed a kid. He's innocent. And I always personally think that's bullshit, because I'm sad that the kid died. to put this out there, I am sad the kid died. It's more that, why doesn't people, like, humans' lives matter at any age, any gender, any race? Why doesn't it all matter? Why isn't it all just base level sad? And during this story, before the kids even brought up, they just talk about, like, you can see on everyone's faces that, yeah, they did the right thing. They got rid of this huge gang that was terrorizing everyone, but, like, it felt dirty, and more importantly, when you kill them and everything's stripped away, they're no longer all this ego, this personification similar to Bonnie and Clyde. You're just kind of murdering a person in cold blood, and it's like, I don't know. I have a huge amount of respect for the human life. I mean, think about how many things have to go right just so all your limbs and everything function, and you learn a certain amount of empathy mixed with a certain amount of intelligence to do a certain amount of good, whether it be in one person's lives or many. I mean, every person's life has something to offer and is a gift. So to kill anyone, even if they are really bad, is just, like, so sad. Personally, I think it's more sad that they fucked up their own life and they could have been a good person as well, but I'm just putting that out there. So as he's telling this story, it says all of that. Third important last moment. So after they have this talk and they successfully pull over Bonnie and Clyde and trick them, that's the first time we see their faces. It's real quick. And they go for their gun, right, like, to the bitter end. But Frank leads the group. Then Manny comes out right up front holding their guns to them. Ivy, the dad, who was fake changing the tire, has run out of the way. And the other police officers come up to the side. And from the front of the car and the side of the car, they just shoot them. Like 100 rounds. Like, they wanted to make sure this couple was hella dead. And then Clyde actually released his foot because he was no longer able to push down the muscle weight of the car. and it was still moving forward, and they weren't sure if they were dead yet, which I'm like, no, really, you got them. So they kept shooting them. It was quite horrific and sad, and they didn't shy away from that. They didn't try to make it seem cool or like Guy Ritchie-like and zoom into the bullet and go through the hole, and then you're into a surreal DTM experience. No, it was quiet and brutal. And afterwards, they needed to take the car and the corpses back to, I guess, like, the morgue or whatever, probably for burial and stuff like that and examination. And as they were taking in, the car gets surrounded by all these groupies, and it's disgusting. I think this really did happen. They're literally reaching through, because the windows are open from them breaking the gunshots, and they're clawing at these. I mean, there's gotta be like 80 bullets in each one of them, all over their face and sides. They're totally limp and dead, and they're clawing and pushing around their bodies. I mean, it's disgusting, and it shows you, again, it's this constant moment of reevaluating the identity of people. Again, this makes me think of Lost, because Lost, I feel like every episode, it's like, I hate that character, I'll never like them. Then a moment later, I have so much sympathy for them, I hate this other character, and you keep going back and forth. It's like one moment, you think Bonnie and Clyde are celebrities. Then the next, you realize they're just humans. Then the next, the people around you you're trying to protect are the real monsters, the way they are insensitively grabbing like a dead body and just excited to get a clip of hair. They're more, it's bigger deal about them about the idea than the things nobody wants to talk about. That's what the Highwaymen are, like the shadow people, having to see the truth and just live with it. So they, they catch Bonnie and Clyde, everything's good. We get a cute little moment where they drive away in the car, and in the beginning, Manny had wanted to drive the car, Frank wouldn't let him, so it's like a little subtle moment when they switch car seats, and you see Manny finally getting to drive the car. It's like a very nice car, and they drive away. And we get a little synopsis of their background story. Apparently, Frank, after Ma retired, the governess, retired. Is it governess if it's a woman, or is it just governor? Governor, she retired, and Frank ended up staying in retirement, but when the Rangers were able to come back out after she was no longer in office, Manny came back full-time till the day he died, which is great, because he really, like, no matter how he feels about it, conflicted, this is what he wants to do, while Frank is happy to put it all behind him, and I'm sure his wife was happy that he was alive and safe. So that was really cool, and I love that. But here's the thing. I was saving it for the end. I decided to change it up, keep it mostly positive, talk about all the interesting points the movie is making. I am not sitting here saying, oh my god, the best movie ever, wow. No. In fact, I'm very confused why people are sensationalizing it so much on Twitter. I feel like they were tricked and dubbed because there were great actors who did a great job acting, in my opinion. The set design was great. The costume design was amazing. I feel like the writing at times was a little forced, but because of the way they approached the subject and like all the points I talked about, all the many layers that they were making, there is a lot of intelligence of what they were trying to get across. So I can't completely like hate on the writing. I think there was a lot of great things going on there, but at times it could have been a little bit better. But for me, what honestly is a very big deal that ruined it, that it was like this close. It could have potentially become a classic, in my opinion. It could have been up there with, your typical classic man's man movies. To be honest with you, what happened was kind of like the direction and cinematography mixed with the soundtrack. I mean, straight up, it's like they went into royalty-free music on YouTube and were like, I want this mood. And they heard the first 20 seconds of it, and it would somewhat fit in a, like maybe a sad moment, but they didn't listen to the whole song through. So as it would swell up like Ariel and the Little Mermaid at like inappropriate times, it was so out of place and really messed up the mood and setting. And because it was so generic, I would argue if you have like a good generic beat, like it's fine. I don't have to sit here. Everything doesn't have to be totally original, but it felt generic in the way that kind of like distracted you from what was potentially supposed to be great moments. In addition to that, I don't know what it is, but the directing made everything feel weird. It's like you turn around and you believe the extras are living in this town. People are doing a great job. People are bringing, Kevin Costner, Woody Harrelson are doing a great job as they ever have. Kathy Bates kills it. But then, like, you just keep feeling like you're aware you're in a movie, or they highlight weird parts, or it's like somehow in his head, I can't blame John Lee Hancock specifically, because I don't know if he specifically wanted this, or the cinematographer, or maybe they made this decision together. I don't know. Not that I'm like a huge fan of his work, but there were these moments where it would just be like, what's a cool shot we could do? And it would zoom up from the grill of the car to their faces, but it didn't seem like it was making a point, and they would do this so much that they were taking away from, I think what makes some of the best classic movies stand out are a lot of slow moments where you're just zooming into someone's face, or you're just holding these close-up shots. A lot of the shots felt awkward, and you just kind of felt like people were going through the motion, and you didn't feel fully sucked into the plot line. So that's like a really big deal, because what I'm saying, it seems really small, but because everything else was working out for the movie, it's like, damn, I mean, that really took away what could have been a great movie. So, yeah, like, I mean, it's okay. I got a little bored at times, but overall, I think there was a lot of fun about it. So, yeah, go turn it on. It's fine. It's okay. What a high note to end on. That was the Highwaymen. If you liked this review, though, I have started a Patreon. Please feel free to support the show. If you can just subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to, that would mean the world to me. Tell a friend. Tweet me. Let me know what you think, honestly. I have a Twitter. I love talking about this stuff with you guys. And overall, I love you so much in the most platonic way possible. Bye!